آسے گریے زہرا کی صدا آتی ہے، دیکھ قسمت ہمیں کس دشت میں لے جاتی ہے، دیکھ قسمت ہمیں کس دشت میں لے جاتی ہے، چین سے سب ہے گھروں میں، مجھے ملتا نہیں چین، سخت آفت میں ہے اب آپ کا یہ نور العین، ٹکڑے دل ہوتا ہے جب رو کے حرم کرتے ہیں بین، ننھے بچوں کو پلا لے کے کدھر جائے حسین، شہر میں چین جنگل میں اما ملتی ہے، دیکھیے قبر مسافر کو کہاں ملتی ہے، دیکھیے قبر مسافر کو کہاں ملتی ہے، اب میرے سر کے لیے تیز ہوئے ہیں خنجر، اہل کی شر پہ کمر باندھ دے یا خیر بشر، آپ نے دی تھی اسی روز کی اماں کو خبر، والدہ روئی تھی 2 روز تلک پیٹ کے سر، اس نواسے کو اگر بھول نہ جانا حضرات، ذبح کے وقت مدد کرنے کو آنا حضرات، ذبح کے وقت کو مدد کرنے کو آنا حضرات، اے میرے گیسوں والے میرے صابر شبیر، میرے بے کس میرے مظلوم مسافر شبیر، نہ رہا کوئی تیرا یار ناصر شبیر، آئے اے گورے گر غریباں کہ مجاور شبیر، تو جہاں جائے گا پیارے وہیں چلتا ہوں میں، خاک اڑاتا ہوا تربت سے نکلتا ہوں میں، خاک اڑاتا ہوا تربت سے نکلتا ہوں میں، ماں کی تربت پہ گئے شاہ چشم خونبار، اتری محمل سے بسط آؤ فغاں زینب زار، دوڑ کر خبر پہ لپٹے جو امام ابرار، ہاں زہرا کے لحد سے نکلا ایک بار، آئی آواز نہ رو دل کو خلق ہے، ہلتی ہے کلیجہ میرا شق ہوتا ہے، قبر ہلتی ہے کلیجہ میرا شق ہوتا ہے، آکے عباس نے سر رکھ دیا پائین مزار، آئی زہرا کی صدا میں تیری غربت کے نثار، اپنے پیاروں کے برابر میں تجھے کرتی ہوں پیار، دھیان بھائی کی حفاظت کر رہے اے دلدار، کوئی غربت میں اسے مار نہ ڈالے بیٹا، میرا شبیر ہے اب تیرے حوالے بیٹا، میرا شبیر ہے اب تیرے حوالے بیٹا۔ اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد۔ مومنین، آپ سب سے معروضہ ہے ایک سورہ فاتحہ جملہ مومنین و مومنات بالخصوص آیت اللہ خمینی شہید المہدی المقدس شہید قاسم سلیمانی، سید عسکری جعفری، مولوی سید عسکری جعفری، اور میرے والدین سید نور الحسن جعفری، سبیحہ نور الحسن جعفری، اور اشرف کے والد سید شجاعت علی سعید، اور آپ کے سب کے مرحومین کے لیے انشاءاللہ ایک سورہ فاتحہ پڑھ کے بخش دیجیے۔ جزاک اللہ۔ بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم۔ جی بسم اللہ مولانا، بسم اللہ۔ السلام علیکم ایوری ون۔
جزاک اللہ۔ اعوذ باللہ من الشیطان اللعین الرجیم، بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم۔ الحمد للہ الذی لا یبلغه مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون، الذي لا يدركه بعد الهمم ولا يناله غوص الفتن، الذي ليس لصفته حد محدود ولا نعت موجود ولا وقت معدود ولا أجل ممدود، فطر الخلائق بقدرته ونشر الرياح برحمته ووتد بالصخور ميادان أرضه، أول الدين معرفته، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، خير المبشرين والمنذرين، شفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وحبيب قلوبنا، سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد، اللهم
صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، صلوات الله عليهم أجمعين، الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا،
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. أما بعد، قال الله عز وجل في القرآن الكريم، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلة من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى الذي باركنا حوله لنريه من آياتنا إنه هو السميع البصير. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Dearest Mu'mineen, Mu'minat, viewers, listeners, I bid you salam, and may the mercy and blessings of Allah be upon you. We continue with our Sunday sessions, and I apologize for the time change, which may have affected many people. However, due to certain circumstances and unavoidable traveling, I just reached home an hour ago, so that is why it is a little different today. Our organizers have asked to talk about the significance or a little bit on what is going to be commemorated today and since last Shab, which is Shab Mehraj. And so we'll spend a little bit of time on this. I know that it is a topic that is commonly discussed, and of course, as the Shias of the Ahlul Bayt celebrate this with great fervor and enthusiasm, and much poetry and much literature and many speeches and many discussions on this have occurred. And I find that the discussions do focus on certain elements of it, so I want to take a slightly different approach. Usually we are discussing topics specifically from Nahjul Balagha, and that will continue from next week. This week I've been asked to specifically talk about this a little bit. Now, when we say Mehraj, we are saying ascension, we are saying peak, we are saying when one goes to the zenith of of anything really. So when we're looking at the Mehraj or the zenith or the peak and what is being ascended and how far are we going up, then it comes to be pretty much all of what is created. So we do know that the holiest messenger, Muhammad al-Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wasallam, indeed was taken up to the highest point in creation. Why did this happen? What is the significance? What is the journey? And you know, the word, as we said in this verse, Surah Isra, first verse, which I started with, in which it says, Subhanallah, the Asra bi'abdihi. So this Asra is a journey. And therefore, when we look at Mehraj, it is, the word Mehraj seems to be focused more on the implications at the end of the journey, the peak of the journey. But the journey was an ascension, and there were many, many stages of that. It is so abundantly recorded in narrations from all sects. It is something that is mentioned in the Quran that is undeniable. So nobody denies the Mehraj. It is simply a question of whether it was physicality, as we, most of the Shias of the Ahlul Bayt agree that it was a physical ascension. However, we know that some other sects are saying, no, it was spiritual. And whether it was physical or spiritual, I really don't think it makes much of a difference as to the significance and the meaning. That becomes more of a physical versus metaphysical debate. And also what happens is when we look at many of the narrations, and I will be focusing mainly on Biharul Anwar. When we look at many of the narrations, it seems like the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when discussing the event and when talking about what he saw and what he asked and what he was told, it sometimes seems like he maybe is unaware of a lot of things. So he's asking Hazrat Jibreel alayhi salam, who is this? Who is that? What is happening here? And many times the holiest messenger did take this approach. So it's important when we look at the situation of what he's saying, it might seem like perhaps he is unaware. But the same thing happens when we see him outside of the Mehraj, when we see him walking in Makkah and Medina and perhaps waiting for a verse to be revealed. So the question is he aware of that verse, or does he have to wait for it to be revealed? When we look at our maktab in our narrations, and we look at examples where we see the holiest messenger holding up the Imam Ali, who has just come into the world, who's in the form of a baby, and asking him to narrate surahs of the Quran or Torah or Injil. On the other hand, we see him waiting for sometimes 3 days for a verse to be revealed, or waiting for many minutes while there is silence. So when you are reading the narrations from the Mehraj, you will find many questions like that. And it's important, I think, for us to ponder and realize that many a time that was because it depended upon the audience. And also, when the holiest Masumeen, the 14 Masumeen, and all prophets before that are explaining Allah, then this is one of the most challenging tasks. And the idea of sometimes saying many things that might lead other people to think that this man is more than a servant of Allah, this man is Allah himself with all this knowledge, there was always that danger. So what we see is the Holy Prophet is revealing knowledge based upon the level of the people in front of him. And that is why when you read through the narrations, you will see many questions like that. I'd like to refer to, for example, a famous event where we see Hazrat Salman now being called Salman min Ahl Bayti. And it is after the battle of the well where Imam Ali goes to fight some jinn. And in this battle, it is said that when the Prophet is talking to his companions, he says that whoever gives me the news of Ali's return first, I will give him whatever he wants. I will fulfill any desire he has, answer any question he has. And at that time, Hazrat Salman, who accompanied Imam Ali, is actually coming back with him. And so then he decides to move ahead of Imam Ali and go towards the messenger, the holy messenger, to tell him that Imam Ali has come so that he will receive the reward. At that time, Hazrat Salman, when he's doing this, Imam Ali says, "Oh Salman, why are you rushing?" He says that I want to announce your coming. And so Imam Ali says, "Don't worry, Salman. All those who are sitting with my brother do not see me right now. So you go ahead." So Hazrat Salman calmly walks ahead, and then he goes to the Prophet and says, and announces, Amir al-Mu'mineen has arrived, victorious. And so at that time, what happened was when Salman was going towards the messenger, Amir al-Mu'mineen stops him and says, "Oh Salman, tell me, what are you going to ask the Holy Prophet?" Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he says, "Oh, Master, you tell me, what should I ask him?" He says, "Salman, ask him for the secrets that Allah revealed to him on the night of Mehraj." And so then what happens is he goes to the Holy Messenger, and after he announces the arrival of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, we see the Prophet smile and say, "Okay, Salman, tell me, what would you like?" And Hazrat Salman says, "I would like to know the 3,000 statements that were revealed to you on the night of Mehraj." And now the Holy Prophet smiles and he says that, "I see that you have been talking to Ali." And he says, "Yes, Master told me to ask this." So he says, "Okay, Salman, there were 3,000 and I'm going to tell you all of them, but 1,000 are not for you to reveal to anybody. 1,000 you may reveal to those whom you think will be able to absorb it and accept it. In other words, the ones who have the zarf, the capacity for it. And then 1,000 you may say to anybody you like." And it is after revealing these that he says, "As-Salmanu min Ahl Bayti. As-Salmanu min Ahl Bayti." And so it coincides with this event. And it is telling us a few things. For example, we are seeing that Hazrat Salman being called part of the Ahlul Bayt is a very, very big status that has not been given to any other human being. So is it because of the 1,000 secrets and that level of knowledge? Is it because of the 10th level of Iman? Is it because of his intense love? Or is there more history? There may be many reasons for it. But because it coincides with this event, it does show us that those 1,000 secrets must have been at a very high level, things that perhaps others would not be able to understand. So when you look at that, what you see is that, on the one hand, the Quran says, "Alimul ghaybi, wa la yudhiru ala ghaybihi ahada, illa man irtada min Rasool." And Allah is the alim of ghayb, and he does not reveal the ghayb to anybody, illa man irtada min Rasool, except the one whom are chosen from the prophets. And there's nobody more chosen than his beloved last messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Therefore, we see that the Holy Prophet does know everything because he's been revealed. It's been revealed, or whatever Allah has put in ghaib has been revealed to him. However, we do see him sometimes waiting. We do see him in the Mehraj asking Hazrat Jibreel, "What is this? What's happening here? Who is this person? Who is that person?" And so on. So, when the holiest messenger took this approach, it was an approach of humbleness. It was an approach where those people who would have perhaps mistaken him for being a god, mistaken him for being the all-powerful, they took this approach, and only in front of those were revealed certain things that could be revealed to those with capacity. So keeping that in mind as you're reading them, and I'll just go through a few of the ahadith that are in Biharul Anwar, and Imam Majlisi has done a great job of compiling them, of course, in a certain order, because they are revealed at different times, but from these we get an idea of what happened from beginning to end. And we begin with Masjid al-Haram, because that's what the verse says, Masjid al-Haram. There are narrations that point to the Prophet ﷺ being in the house of the sister of Amir al-Mu'mineen at that time as well. And so there's different narrations about that. But what we know is that Buraq was brought forth, and Hazrat Jibra'il, Hazrat Mikail, Hazrat Israfil alayhim as-salam all came with Buraq. And then Hazrat Jibra'il held the reins, while Hazrat Mikail held the saddle. And then Hazrat Israfil helped the holiest messenger and held his clothes as he climbed onto Buraq. And it is said that at that time, Buraq started trembling. And as he trembled, the weight of prophethood is now upon him. And then Jibra'il says to Buraq, "Oh Buraq, be calm, because now this noblest of the prophets of Allah is upon you, and none like him has ridden you, no one has ridden you before him, and none like him will ever ride you after him." So then Buraq now becomes tranquil, and it is said that the ascension begins. So he is going with these three angels, and he is upon Buraq. And before he starts to ascend out of what we consider as planet Earth, we see him visiting Medina, and then praying over there. Then he goes to Mount Sinai, Tur Sin, and praying over there. Then he goes to Baitul Laham, which is Bethlehem, the birthplace of Hazrat Isa alayhi salam, and then he prays over there. And then going to Baitul Muqaddas, and then praying over there. It is said after that, then the ascension actually begins. And then as he ascends, he is first going past the scenes of hell. So in this, in one narration, he says, "I saw hell, I saw heaven, I saw the prophets, I saw the angels, I saw the Arsh, and I saw Sidratul Muntaha, and what is beyond Sidratul Muntaha." So in this event, what we are seeing is that the holy prophets, the way the Quran describes it and the way the evidence is presented, it is an entire picture being painted for all of the Muslimin, so that it will increase their faith in that which is unseen. So he starts with the seen, that which is physical and that which is evident to us, Medina, Mount Sinai, and Baitul Muqaddas, and so on. And then after that, it goes into those which we have not seen, but we are only imagining. And so what he's doing is he reinforcing our iman in our faith. Allah, through this, the purpose of this is to reinforce our faith. It is called a Mehraj, but really we who are the lovers of the Ahlul Bayt know that this is where they are coming from. This is a return for the holiest messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He is returning to where he is coming from. So that is his home. He picturizes it like he is a tourist, like he's seeing it for the first time. And the beauty of that is it allows those Muslims who are listening to feel that with him. So as a narrator of this now, it becomes more relatable to all of the Muslimin as they are hearing about hell and heaven and the various levels of heaven. And he talks about each stage, and then the Arsh, and he describes trees and angels. And as he's doing that, and he's describing it from the perspective of one who is going and journeying there almost for the first time as a tourist, what it does is it starts to put a picture in the mind of all the Muslimin. So one of the main effects of this, when we look at it from beginning to end, is that it reinforces our faith, and it increases our ability to visualize that which till now is unseen for us. So it is said that he continues in his ascension, but after leaving this earth, then he goes beyond, and then he first describes hell. So it would seem that he moves past the gates of hell and then towards heaven. Now, it doesn't give us an exact picture of where this is in our universe, and even if it's outside of this physical universe, or if it is within, some of the unseen, or in the galaxies, or in the unseen. But what it tells us is that in that ascension, in that journey, there is a hell coming first and then a heaven. And so it is said that as he describes hell, for example, then he hears a sound. And when he hears that sound, he says the sound was very powerful. It was frightening. Now, would the holiest messenger be frightened? We would not expect that, of course. But on the other hand, you can see how he is narrating it in a way that others will relate to it when he recounts it in Makkah. So he says that when he asks Hazrat Jibreel, what is that sound? And it is said that that sound was a stone that fell into hell 70 years ago and now has just hit the bottom of the first level. So we start to get an idea about the expansion of this hell. We get an idea about the size of this hell. He then continues on and he talks about some people who he sees. And he sees, I saw some people who were eating rotten meat with worms and putrid, decaying. And as he mentions that, he asks Hazrat Jibreel, who are these people who are eating this meat? And it is says that Hazrat Jibreel says that these are the ones who ate haram food. So we are beginning with looking at the importance just of eating halal food. He goes on to say that, then I saw some people, and these people, and he describes the punishment that was being given to them. And then he says, who was being given this severe punishment? It's very vivid. It's like cutting scissors or cutting lips, and then that is being fed to them, and very, very scary imagery. And he says those are the people who were backbiters, and also the people who would sleep while foregoing Salatul Isha. They would sleep without praying Salatul Isha. What's interesting is that both of these are mentioned together. We know that riba is indeed, we know how bad that is. But sometimes we may not take as seriously the skipping of a salat, and it being mentioned together over here is telling us that this is something to ponder upon. Another interesting thing is that then he describes another scene of heaven where fire is being poured into mouths and it is coming out of their body, and it is a continuous process. And after he describes that imagery, he asks Hazrat Jibreel, what happened to these people? And Hazrat Jibreel says, these are the people who stole from that which was to be given to the orphans. The rights of the orphans were taken from them by these people, and also those who were taking interest. So interesting again is that we've put interest together, usury, with stealing from orphans. We realize that stealing from orphans is, of course, a horrible act, but we may sometimes underestimate the evil of interest, for example, and profiting from it. So he describes these scenes, and then it is after that, and then he goes on to describe another scene in hell in which he sees some women being punished severely, and he says, who are these people? And Hazrat Jibreel says, these are those whom had falsely attributed their children to a father by saying this is the father, just so that they could benefit financially. So that, again, is something that people may not take that seriously, but I find it interesting that these are the specific sins and sinners that are mentioned. And then we see, then he ascends, and then he starts to talk about heaven. And when he's talking about heaven, then he describes meeting certain people. And so, for example, he says that we went to the first level of Jannah and we saw Hazrat Adam over there. And then he talks to Hazrat Adam, and then after that he goes on and sees the angel of death, and then he talks to Malakul Maut. And one of the interesting things that Malakul Maut says is that he says that when Malakul Maut comes, Malakul Maut talks to the Prophet, and the Prophet asks Malakul Maut, so what has Allah given you? He says, I have authority to see all houses and all people. I can see everything that's happening. I'm able to manipulate. I can take out their souls, It is like a coin in my hand. And he also says that there is not a single house which I do not visit 5 times per day. And I say to the people of that house that do not mourn over your deceased, because I will continuously come and go from your house until the time comes when not a single person will remain there. So again, you know, we are being reminded of death as well in the Mehraj. And then he goes on and then he sees an angel. And this angel is an angel who's half, this is in heaven, half the body is made of this glowing fire, half is made of ice. And it is an angel that is constantly supplicating for mercy upon the people of earth. And half of it, and the other half is saying, "Oh Allah, destroy those who are stingy and miserly." And then it is said that he continues on his journey. And then he goes on to the second level of heaven. It is said then when he reaches the second level of heaven, he meets 2 prophets and who look very similar to each other. And he asks Hazrat Jibreel alayhi salam, "Who are these prophets?" And Hazrat Jibreel says, "This is Prophet Yahya and Prophet Isa alayhi salam." And then he meets those 2 prophets, and then they exchange greetings, salam, and du'as upon each other. And then it is said that then he goes on up to the 3rd level of heaven. When he reaches the 3rd level of heaven, there it is said he meets Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam. And he says that I see someone who was glowing like the moon on its 10th day. And then he meets Hazrat Yusuf, and then he continues on. It is said then that he goes to the 4th level of heaven. In the 4th level of heaven, he says that there I meet Hazrat Idris. And then after exchanging, greetings with Hazrat Idris, he continues on. He says, also, I saw an angel there as well that was that had under his command the 70,000 angels of the Arsh as well. And he talks to him. Then he goes to the 5th level of heaven. In the 5th level of heaven, he says, I saw a tall man, and I had not seen anyone like him. His eyes were large, he was very old, and his nation was surrounding him. He says that when I asked Hazrat Jibreel, who is this? He says, this is Harun ibn Imran. This is the Janasheen of Musa. And he meets him as well. And then after he meets him and they exchange du'as, then he moves on. And it is said that then he reaches the 6th level of heaven, where he meets a very tall man whose name is not even mentioned in the narration. And when he meets him, then the prophet asks, who are you? He says that the Bani Israel say that I am the best of the children of Bani Israel in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you, O Prophet, are much, much better and more beneficent in the sight of Allah than I am. So it seems that here we are being given an inkling of the superiority of the holiest messenger. And then he continues. And it is interesting that he goes on to the 7th heaven now. In the 7th heaven, a strange narration appears. And in this narration in Biharul Anwar, volume 18, which is where we'll see this whole sequence that I'm discussing, it is said that when he reaches 7th heaven, an angel comes to him and says that Allah has commanded you to do hijama, and to command that to your ummah as well. And hijama, which we call cupping, which is the act of healing through bleeding. The idea of either cupping is something that they do which causes a bruise, and that is also damaging blood vessels, which don't necessarily come out of the body. So it's a little more, maybe a more septic version. Instead of cutting into the skin where blood is coming out, both of them will cause bleeding and damage to blood vessels. But in the cupping, they don't break the skin, so then they don't have to worry about infections. However, both are done, and both are part of hijama. And the interesting thing is this is also being mentioned in the Mehraj. So what we see is there is some significance of this and importance of this, and there is benefit in that, which perhaps I'm not sure if modern science has even been able to explain those benefits properly yet. I don't want to take us off onto the therapeutic benefits of that, but I will move on. It is said that in the 7th heaven, he also meets a man whose hair color was a mix of black and white. I asked Jibreel, who is this? And he is sitting at the door of Baitul Ma'mur. This is an indication that Baitul Ma'mur is found in the 7th heaven. And it says, who is sitting at the door? Baitul Ma'mur, near Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hazrat Jibreel alayhi salam replies, it is your father, Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam. So at that time, it is said, then he goes to Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam. He recites a verse of the Quran, which is in his praise. Verily, the best of the people to Ibrahim are those that follow him, and those who believe in Allah, for Allah is a guardian of the believers. And then he greets him, and then the whole Hazrat Ibrahim welcomes him. And then it is said that after that, he moves on. And in the seventh heaven, he sees rivers of light and rivers of darkness as well. Light so bright it blinds the eyes. Darkness covered with ice with sounds of thunder. The scene is so beautiful that it is said that Hazrat Jibreel says, "Oh, beloved messenger, be thankful to Allah for the graces and bounties that have been chosen for you." And then he prays and says, "Oh Allah, by your power and your glory, keep my faith firm." And then he continues on. It is said that at this time, Hazrat Jibreel says, there are between Allah and creation 90,000 layers, hijabat, layers of concealment. So 90,000 hijabat. And he says that of the creatures that are closest to Allah, Israfil and myself, Hazrat Jibreel is saying, Hazrat Israfil and myself are the closest in the creation to Allah. Between us, not 90,000, but 4 veils exist. And this is a very important narration at this point, because Hazrat Jibreel is saying that me and Hazrat Israfil are the closest in the creations to Allah. Between us, there are 4 veils: light, darkness, cloud, and water. Yet when we see the holiest messenger moving beyond and going to that point where Hazrat Jibreel now stops and he moves beyond. So that is when we want to remember this narration again, where Hazrat Jibreel now is not able to go past that. So that means that after Sidratul Muntaha, where Hazrat Jibreel alayhi salam stops, that is where we have the veils of light, darkness, and cloud, and water. And then as he continues, it is said that he sees an angel on the 7th heaven, whose feet are on the floor of the 7th heaven, and whose head is reaching up to the arsh. And so now we get another picture. What this tells us is that now as we move higher past the 7th heaven, as we've been journeying from the levels of hell, then up levels of heaven, now we are reaching the arsh. So we're getting a little geography over here of what is happening. So it does a wonderful job of painting a picture for us. It is said that as he continues up towards the arsh, he sees an angel next to the arsh whose wings are folded, but are so large that if he unfolded his wings, it would cover the east to the west of the universe. And each morning he opens his wings and he cries out, "Glory be to Allah, Subhanallah al-Malik al-Quddus, Subhanallah al-Kabir al-Muta'al, La ilaha illallah, al-Hayy al-Qayyum." And then he moves on. And as he moves on, it is said that he now goes, a few things happened at Baitul. What is said that in heaven, at one of the lower levels, he prayed salah and he led the salah. And it is said that when all the prophets gathered around, and Hazrat Jibreel was there as well, he says that I stood back to see who will lead the salah. And I thought Hazrat Jibreel would, and then Hazrat Jibreel asked me to come forward. Now, this is not unlike after Zuhur, where our holy Imam Ajjallahu Farajahum will be standing, and then he will stand and he will say, "Oh, Isa, you lead the prayer." And Hazrat Isa will say, "No, you do." And so what we see over here is that Hazrat Jibreel says, "You lead it." And so this is again an indication where we are seeing, on the one hand, it seems like someone is touring this place who doesn't know what's happening. On the other hand, we are being also shown his clear superiority over all the prophets and angels, and now he is leading the salah. And in the seventh heaven, in Baitul Ma'mur, it is said that over there, we see the angels all gathered. So the prophets first, and then he led the salah for all the angels as well. And when the angels were there again, he says, I stood back, and then I was pushed forward, and I was told to lead the salah. And so he says that, and he describes the seventh heaven with a few statements that are fascinating. And he says that I saw a river of Kawthar. I saw a river of mercy. I saw birds that were the size of camels and huge pomegranates. So he's describing these events. And then as he goes on, then he reaches Sidratul Muntaha. And when he reaches there, also in the seventh heaven, he describes Shajarai Tuba. He says there is a tree. This is seventh heaven. And that's important because there's a verse in the Holy Quran in which it says that, Shajarai Tuba will be the gift of those who are the mu'mineen. And so therefore, Iman does take one to this. Alladhina amanu wa amilu salihati tuba lahum wa husnu ma'ab. Tuba shall be theirs and a goodly return. So you're also getting a motivation of the place where you can reside for all eternity on seventh heaven. And also it is interesting that he's meeting different prophets at different heavens. So we're getting an idea that there are different levels, but the highest level is the seventh heaven. And that is where there's Baitul Ma'mur. And Baitul Ma'mur is also said to be the house of the Ahlul Bayt. Like Baitul Maqaddas upon earth is the house of the prophets of Bani Israel, alayhim salam. So it says Shajarai Tuba is such a large tree that it shades the entire seventh heaven. And there is not one house in heaven, he says, that is being touched upon by Shajarai Tuba. Shajarai Tuba in some places has also been parallel, an analogy with the Ahlul Bayt, alayhim salam. So now when he reaches Sidratul Muntaha, so after all of this journey, now he reaches Sidratul Muntaha. So we see what a beautiful scenery and story has been presented for us. And now finally, Hazrat Jibreel says that now you must go forward alone. I cannot move past here, or I will not be able to exist. He says that I will alight and disintegrate. Par jal jayenge, as they say. So what we see is that now he moves beyond, and these are the final veils. So he's going to meet him. And it is said that at that time when he moves beyond, he sees a curtain. And then he comes to that curtain and sits down. And then he speaks, and there is a voice from behind that curtain. And this is where they have that discussion where 3,000 statements were given, of which, or more than that, but those 3,000 were given to Hazrat Salman. We're not sure how much was discussed here, or perhaps it really doesn't matter to us. But what matters to us is that we know that he talked in the lisan, we say, in the lahja, in the voice of Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam. And not only that, we know that a hand came out from behind the curtain. Now, the interesting thing is that over here, we are saying that on the one hand, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking because he says that in your heart, I saw the love of Ali as your closest friend. So I spoke to you in that voice that would comfort you. So we do see that being said in narrations. On the other hand, when we are trying to understand Tawheed, we realize that he does not physically manifest. A voice physically manifesting as well would mean that he has created this voice. So if he has created this voice, then this voice is a creation. And that means that either he has created a voice that is exactly the same as what he has in Amirul Mu'mineen, or it is telling us that whenever he uses a medium to speak, he is speaking in the medium that is Lisanullah. So therefore, what we are seeing is that does he need to create a separate voice, or can he use the 14 as his medium? Does he need to have a separate medium, or are they not enough? Then what happens is when we look at the Quran, what we see is that he is meeting somebody there. I'd like to quote a couple of verses. Surah Takwir, which is surah number 81, verse number 22 and verse number 23. Of course, you can imagine the objections of those people who, when the holiest messenger comes back to Mecca, and then also talking about this in years to come, and in Medina as well, when he is telling them that I heard the voice of Ali. Allah spoke to me in the voice of Ali. I saw a hand come out, and it was the hand of Ali. You can imagine the objections. You can imagine the jealousy of the munafiqeen and so on. So they started to call him Majnoon. And 81:22, Surah 81, verse 22 says, وَمَا صَاحِبِكُمْ بِمَجْنُونَ, and is not your sahib, your master, my prophet, your Mawla. He is not Majnoon. And then to verse 23 says, وَلَقَدْ رَآهُ بِالْأُفُقِ الْمُبِينِ, and without a doubt he saw him in Ufuq Mubin. Ufuq is the horizon, is the sky. So there was a horizon after Sidratul Muntaha where he saw, and it's being called Ufuqul Mubin. Mubin is that which is manifest. Mubin is that which is apparent. Mubin is that which is nur. Mubin is that which directs you to something. Allah is not Mubin. He is the one who is the creator of Mubin, which is going to guide you to him. That is why Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam is called Imamul Mubin. There are narrations for this when they asked the holiest messenger sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, who is Imam Mubin in Surah Yasin, وَكُلَّ شَيْءٍ أَحْصَيْنَاهُ فِي إِمَامٍ مُبِينٍ. And they asked him, is it the Torah? Is it the Quran? Is it the Zabur? Is it the Injil? The holiest messenger said, no, it is neither of those. Wait, and I will tell you. And moments later, when Amir al-Mu'mineen comes into the mosque, he says, Huwa hadha, hadha. He points to Imam Ali and says, he is Imam Mubin. Imam Mubin, Amir al-Mu'mineen has been called Kitabul Mubin. When Imam Musa ibn Ja'far as-salatu was-salam, like in our book Al-Awalim al-Ulum, and in our book Al-Kafi, in our book Hilyatul Abrar, in our book and many others, Tafsir al-Burhan, you will see that Imam Musa ibn Ja'far, when talking to a Christian, says Ha-Mim wal-Kitabil Mubin. And then the Christian says, who is Ha-Mim and who is Kitabil Mubin? He says Ha-Mim is the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, and Kitabil Mubin is Amirul Mu'mineen as-salatu was-salam, Ali ibn Abi Talib. So after he says this, we realize that Ufuq al-Mubin must have some connection to Amir al-Mu'mineen. So it is no coincidence that we see that meeting place where Imam Ali's voice is used and the hand comes out is being called Ufuq al-Mubin. And Allah is saying, وَلَقَدْ رَآهُ, indeed he saw him in the clear horizon. When you look at translations, even from our brothers of the other sects, you will see that when they translate this in English, they have not put a capital He. That is telling you that it is not about Allah. Allah is the one who is saying this. Quran is the statement of Allah. So Allah is saying that he is not Majnoon. He saw him in Ufuq al-Mubin. That is telling us something very significant. Also Surah Najm, in which we know Dana fatadalla qaba qawsayn aw adna. In that, what we're seeing is that is Surah Najm in the beginning. And if you go to verse 12 of Surah Najm 53:12, it says, Afatumarunahu ala yara. Will you then dispute with him concerning what he saw? And none of them are capital here in translations even. They know. The people who understand Arabic know that Allah is talking about, the translators, about someone else. He is saying, will you dispute him? Will you dispute my holy messenger, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, concerning what he saw? And then the next verse, 53:13 says, وَلَقَدْ رَآهُ, just like in Surah Takwir, again, the same statement. Over there it said, وَلَقَدْ رَآهُ بِالْأُفُقِ الْمُبِينِ. He saw him in the skies of Ali. وَلَقَدْ, and here 53:13, وَلَقَدْ رَآهُ نَزْلَةً أُخْرَى. And indeed he saw him, nazlatan, revealed, ukhra, a second time. So, and عند سدرة المنتهى, near Sidratul Muntaha. And so, عندها جنة المأوى. And so this is the garden of abode. So what we're seeing here is that Allah is saying in 53, 11, 12, and 13, are you going to dispute with him? Do you not know that he saw him again? And the holiest messenger, in one statement to Hazrat Salman, in a lengthy discussion, one sentence from there, he says, "O Salman, do you not know that I saw Ali?" Because Hazrat Salman is trying to understand Amir al-Mu'mineen, is saying that I don't understand how I saw Imam Ali over here and over here. How is this possible? And he says, do you not know that I have seen Ali in the mountains? I have seen him in the seas. I have seen him in the deserts and in the skies. I have seen him in every level of heaven. I have seen him beyond Sidratul Muntaha. And he says that, do you know that when I came back from the Mehraj, then Ali came and visited me? And he whispered into my ear everything that Allah had told me from beyond the curtain. So when he is saying this, do you not see this verse is exactly talking about that? It is so beautiful. وَلَقَدْ رَآهُ نَزْلَةً أُخْرَى. For indeed, 53, 13. And that was 81, 22, and 23. You will certainly enjoy those verses as you look at them. For indeed, he saw me descending a second time. For indeed, he saw him. So who's he who saw him descending a second time? He is the holiest messenger. And who did he see descending and talking to him then? That is Amir al-Mu'mineen. Now, our entire Nahjul Balagha discussions have been on Tawheed, and they will continue to be. But what we're seeing here is that the closest we can reach Tawheed, this is for us, really. The closest we can reach Tawheed will be to have nearness to the Ahlul Bayt, who are his representatives. So it is manifesting that for us rather than the idea that we will see Allah. Because now, at least those people who are still professing in other sects that they're going to see Allah on the Day of Judgment, when the holiest messenger is not seeing him, going past all of that, then it becomes silly for us to think that as Muslims, as followers of the Holy Messenger, we're going to see Allah on the Day of Judgment. And he is saying that I did not visualize him in a vision that these eyes see, even when I went through this entire journey and went beyond to where I went. So that was the picture that I just wanted to create. Those who are sitting before me are my betters and more knowledgeable, of course. And I sometimes feel a little bit strange because, you know, I have such knowledgeable and wise people before me. But I say these things because I know that hopefully some young ones will listen. And maybe if anything makes sense to someone, then that is my nijat, inshallah. Salam hai us Hussain par. Salam hai us Hussain ki behan par. कि जिस वक्त वलीद के दरबार से पैगाम आया कि इमाम हुसैन को तलब किया गया है और इमाम हुसैन इमाम वक्त को इल्म था, जाहिर है, और जानते थे कि मुआविया वासिल जहन्नम हो गया है और अब जो है वो बैअत का मुतालबा किया जा रहा है, तो उस वक्त बीबी आकाज़ादी बिनते अली अपने भाई इमाम हुसैन के साथ थी। और जब इमाम हुसैन तैयार हुए, कहा उससे, कासिद से, कि जाओ कह दो मैं आ जाऊंगा। उसके बाद जब इमाम उठे इस नियत से कि मैं जाता हूं, तो उस वक्त बीबी ज़ैनब उठी और कहा कि हुसैन भाई आप ऐसे नहीं जाएंगे। कहा अब्बास को बुलाओ। अब्बास, हजरत अब्बास को बुलाया गया और कहा कि अब्बास तमाम भाइयों को जमा करो और बनी हाशिम के जवानों को जमा करो और सब सिखाओ कि मेरे भाई हुसैन के साथ जाएं। मुझे आज रात लग रहा है कि कोई बुरी खबर आने वाली है। उस वक्त बीबी ज़ैनब ने इमाम हुसैन की हिफाजत के लिए जब घर से निकले इमाम हुसैन, तो बीबी की दुआओं के साथ, अभी तो अब्बास हैं, अभी 17 भाई मौजूद हैं इमाम हुसैन के, अभी अली अकबर और कासिम है, अभी ओन मोहम्मद हैं। मैं सोचता हूं कि आकाज़ादी बिनते अली ने जब मदीने के घर से अपने भाई को भेजा होगा, तो ये सोच के इस हिफाजत के गिरोह के साथ भेजा था। और फिर एक मंजर आशूर के दिन देखता हूं मैं کہ اب کوئی نہ رہا، سب گنج شہدا میں سو رہے ہیں، اور امام حسین غربت کے عالم میں کہہ رہے ہیں حل من ناصر ینصرنا۔ اس وقت بی بی زینب نے دائیں بائیں تو دیکھا ہوگا، عباس کو یاد تو کیا ہوگا، کہا ہوگا کوئی اور نہیں ہے۔ اس وقت بی بی زینب باہر آئی اور کہا اپنے بھائی سے بھیا ابھی زینب زندہ ہے، یہ غربت کی صدا نہ لگائیے، میں آپ کو سوار کراؤں گی، آپ میدان جنگ میں جا رہے ہیں۔ یہ منظر بہت رلاتا ہے عزاداروں کہ کہاں مدینے میں اور کس طرح سے یہاں پہ ہم نے دیکھا۔ ہاں عزاداروں، ایک اور منظر بہت رلاتا ہے کہ جب تیاری ہو گئی کربلا کی طرف روانگی کی اور مکے کی طرف روانہ ہونا تھا، تو اس وقت جو ہے امام حسین نے جب دیکھا کہ سب سوار ہو گئے ہیں، تمام محملوں میں مستورات آ گئی ہیں، بس فاطمۃ الزہرا اور علی مرتضیٰ کی بیٹی آقازادی بنت علی زینب کبریٰ کو آنا تھا۔ اس وقت منظر کچھ اور تھا عزاداروں، اس وقت حضرت عباس طواف کر رہے تھے قافلے کا، تمام دکانوں کو بند کرا دیا تھا، علی اکبر اور قاسم نے سب سے کہہ دیا تھا اپنے اپنے گھروں میں داخل ہو جاؤ۔ اس وقت کنیزوں کے اور مستورات بنی ہاشم کے ہجوم میں ایک بی بی آئی تھی، ابھی چادر عصمت سر پر تھی، ابھی کوئی نگاہ کر نہیں سکتا تھا، ابھی آسمان بھی نہیں دیکھ رہا تھا، آسمان نے بھی اپنے آنکھیں بند کر لی ہوں گی، اس وقت سورج نے بھی۔ اس وقت جب بی بی آگے آئی ہیں تو سوار ہونا چاہا تو سوار کیا گیا، لیکن میں یہ سوچتا ہوں کہ آقازادی ابھی تو مدینہ ہے، ابھی تو آپ کے سارے بھائی موجود ہیں، ابھی تو آپ سوار ہو گئی شان و شوکت کے ساتھ، لیکن آقازادی ایک وقت آئے گا جب عاشور گزر چکی ہوگی، شام غریبہ گزر چکی ہوگی، اس وقت جو ہے سر پہ چادر نہیں ہوگی، ہاتھ پس گردن بندے ہوں گے، ایک آپ کا بھتیجا آگے آئے گا جس کے ہاتھ پس گردن بندے ہوں گے، جس کے ہاتھ ہتکڑیوں میں ہوں گے، پاؤں بیڑیوں میں ہوں گے، اور گلے میں توق ہوگا، اور اب آپ کو سید سجاد ہی سوار کرائیں گے۔ اس لیے اس وقت جب بی بی سوار ہونے والی تھی مدینے میں تو امام حسین آگے بڑھے اپنی بہن کو سوار کرانے کے لیے، لیکن بہن نے روک دیا۔ اس کے بعد حضرت عباس آگے بڑھے، بہن نے روک دیا، نہیں بھیا عباس آج آپ سوار نہیں کرائیں گے۔ حضرت علی اکبر آگے آئے، زینب نے کہا علی اکبر تم میرے بیٹے ہو، میں تمہاری ماں ہوں، میری جان تم پر قربان، تم بھی پیچھے ہٹ جاؤ۔ قاسم کو بھی ہٹا دیا۔ جب سمجھ میں نہ آیا کہ کون سوار کرائے تو اس وقت بی بی نے ایک جملہ کہا، آج مجھے وہی سوار کرائے گا جو مجھے کربلا سے شام تک سوار کرائے گا، اور کوئی اور آگے نہ آیا۔ زادارو دیکھا کہ سید سجاد زین العابدین آگے آئے اور کہا پھوپھی اماں سوار ہو جائیے۔ فَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ أَلَا لَعْنَةُ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ۔ آپ سب سے گزارش کی جاتی ہے کہ جن جن مرحومین کے نام لیے گئے شروع میں، تمام مرحومین حسین جعفری صاحب اور جو موجود ہیں حاضرین اور مومنین کے مرحومین کے لیے ایک سورہ فاتحہ، 3 دفعہ سورہ اخلاص، 1 دفعہ سورہ قدر کی تلاوت فرما دیں۔ بسم اللہ۔
Can open the session for any questions if there are any.
First of all, thank you so much for your very enlightened and beautiful presentation of Mehraj. I would at least like to believe that, most of the description that you related was since this is all for our benefit. Our benefit means in general, I'm saying, because there are two points that come to my mind. Is we believe our itiqad says that the first creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was Huzur Akram, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And so nothing should have come as a surprise in terms of, what the questions basically was, where that who's he and who's, what is this and so forth. And then the second quick point I have is we also believe that the teacher of Hazrat Jibreel was Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Imam Ali alayhi salam, right? We refer to them as Ustad Jibreel. So again, the Prophet asking Hazrat Jibreel and Hazrat Jibreel basically responding. So how do you reconcile these two, beliefs with what you? I 100% believe what you said, because you don't say anything without a lot of these references. For someone like he who's to maybe see if you can maybe help us understand, inshallah.
Yes, absolutely, Hussain Jafri Saab. That is, I'm glad you brought that up, because, and I wanted to, I specifically, I could have probably just talked about everything I said without mentioning those questions. And I deliberately did, because as we encourage our young ones to read the narrations, they will come across these things. And I find it's important to equip them with the understanding of what's happening here, which is why in the beginning, my original premise, and I began with, the verse of Alimul Ghaibi, where we know that the ones who are chosen from the prophets are given the ilm of Ghaib. And we often find this as a technique. It's almost like a narrative technique. It's almost like a storytelling technique. I find that they've used that so much. And for example, whenever somebody comes to one of the Masumeen and says, and has a question, sometimes we see them answering before they ask the question. Like we have seen, there's many narrations of Aimma and Imams have, when needed, they have answered the question even without them asking. We were talking about recently, it was the martyrdom of the seventh Imam, Imam Musa ibn Jafar, salatu wassalamu alayhi. And we see over there, there's one event where this man named Shaqiq Balkhi comes to him and says, and wants to talk to him, and he actually wants to accuse him of something that he had assumed about the Imam. And the Imam looks at him, and Shaqiq says, before I even opened my mouth, I wanted to accuse him of something. He immediately quotes a verse from the Quran that says, do not make assumptions. So on the one hand, we will see them answering people before they ask the question. On the one hand, we see them sometimes, a man comes to one of our holy Imams and has many questions, and he asks them those questions, and the Imam answers. And then as the man is about to get up, the Imam says, wait, you didn't ask me this question. And then he remembers and he says, yes, that was the main question I meant to ask you. So sometimes, and I think that if they didn't do this, it would be a very different communication mode with them. What they do is they make themselves relatable. They show their human side as well, because there is a nur side to them and there is a tinat side to them. There is a nur side to them, which is something that is unfathomable. There is the bashar side to them as well. And so I think that in trying to relate, make themselves more relatable, otherwise, what conversations would people really have with them? You know, they know everything. They know what people are thinking. They can, as it would become very machine-like almost, I feel. That humanity, that relation, the decorum of conversation. Hello, salamu alaikum wa alaikum assalam. How are you doing today? Even that question would not be necessary for them. So what did you do today? Where are you coming from? Oh, I was there. Okay. And so the way they would talk to people was, by asking these things. And I think that also goes over into many of their narrative techniques as well, just to make it a little relatable, because sometimes people would be so overawed by them that they would just not open their mouth in front of them. They would not know how to speak to them. They would just sit there blank, staring at them, not knowing what to say. They would sit there completely paranoid about everything that they are thinking when they're in front of the Masum. Oh no, now I'm thinking this. Now he knows I'm thinking this. Now he knows I'm thinking this, right? And so I feel that they adopted that because they wanted to be relatable, and so that we can converse with them in that way. And I think that many of their narrations appear that way as well. Because on the other hand, you see Awwalu ma khalaqallahu nuri, which you were referring to, that Allah first created my nur. Then, from my nur, he created this, and from Imam Ali's nur, he created this, and so on. So that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, right. And the duas also same application, right, Maulana? The duas where they're asking for forgiveness of their sins. And, if you look at the Saif-e Kamila or Saif-e Alawiya, and unfortunately those twist that say, the reason why they're asking these du'as is because they have committed these sins, those that don't have the marifa. But it's for us that they basically crafted those du'as the way they did.
Yes, that's absolutely right. And, that's also a very, 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 very big misconception and an injustice, right? And I absolutely agree with you. Both things. One is the astaghfar, which we know is for us and not for them. And because then, it would nullify so many of the other narrations, then it would not make sense. And also, a person came to Amir al-Mu'mineen and said that I am in need of something. For example, I think he wanted offspring. He wanted children and he didn't have children. So Amir al-Mu'mineen said, do astaghfar. Another man comes and says to Amir al-Mu'mineen, it's a famous incident that relates to the Quran. Yeah. Your smile is telling me that you've definitely heard that. And and then he asks for children. One asks for land, one needs a river of water near his land. And in all those situations, Amir al-Mu'mineen is saying, recite astaghfar. And then Amir al-Mu'mineen recites the verse of the Quran, which also mentions this. So the idea of astaghfar for just forgiveness, because, tawbah is for forgiveness. Absolutely, when we say tawbah, when we've committed a mistake, but astaghfar itself, it also brings blessings of Allah, mercy of Allah. It gives children, it gives wealth, it gives prosperity. So those du'as, and you're absolutely right, on every level when they met, it says that the Holy Messenger says that I did astaghfar for, Hazrat Yahya and Hazrat Isa, they did astaghfar for me. So that is about increasing in blessings upon each other. Absolutely. I'm so happy you brought that up. Jazakallah. Very important.
Yeah. I have two questions. First, I'll thank you for making a beautiful presentation of the Mehraj. That was very useful. One is that Masjid al-Aqsa. Masjid al-Aqsa, there are two viewpoints. One is Masjid al-Aqsa, which is Baitul Muqaddas. The other viewpoint is there's a masjid up in high heavens where it's situated. So which one is more credible in your viewpoint? The Masjid al-Aqsa that's referred is in the heavens, or the Masjid al-Aqsa which is on the earth?
the way the Quran is describing it, and from Masjid al-Haram to Masjid al-Aqsa, and the way the verses go, it seems like there's an ascension. So it seems like we are going from here to there. So the way it describes it, it looks like we're talking about Masjid al-Aqsa in the heaven. Yes. Some narrations point to other locations on our planet as well. So I think that when we look at Baitul Ma'mur, that may be what is the reference of Masjid al-Aqsa, which is on the seventh heaven. And so I think it is not unlikely that from the narrations also talking about Baitul Muqaddas, for example, and Medina as well, and Tur Sinin as well, I would not be surprised if he had actually gone to these locations and then ascended up. And that masjid, which is on the seventh heaven, is what is referred to in the Quranic verse.
Right. And the other question, thank you. The other question was that there are some narrations which say that Rasulullah actually performed many, many Mehraj. The one was for the public that we know, this the Quran, and we talk about it. But there are other many, many Mehrajes that he performed, which we do not know about.
Yes, absolutely. It is mentioned, and narrations are even talk about 1,000 mirages, and so that would not be surprising in the sense that we know that there were many times, for example, when he would be in the cave of Hira, and he would be there for a long time alone by himself. And also in this one Miraj, when we see that time now is not relevant because he comes and goes, and as it says, the handle of the door is still swinging when he returns. So it would seem that he could be from that. If time is not a factor, then he could be simultaneously in Miraj almost at every moment. And it could refer to actually just certain instances when he was there.
Yeah. Thank you.
And just a clarification, Maulana, I'm sorry, I hope others don't have any sense. Is the event of Mehraj also connected where there was a caravan that was basically going and a prophet referred to that caravan, that was on the way from Makkah to Jerusalem or Baitul Muqaddas. Is that also just a clarification, or do you know what I'm talking about? But yes, there was a caravan that saw the prophet. Is that
I have not seen a mention of that caravan in the narrations that I have read. I haven't seen that.
Okay.
There may be something that's beyond
confused.
my scope. Yeah, I will look. I will search definitely, but I haven't heard of that. No.
May I add something here? Well, actually, the people in Mecca did not believe he went for Miraj. They wanted proof. So he said, I saw a caravan approaching Mecca, and there's some specifics that they had and some details. So they waited until the caravan arrived. And then that was the proof.
Yes, Akhtar Sahab. Yes. Absolutely. They did not believe, and so then what happened was he started to describe the Baitul Muqaddas mosque and the minarets and the way it is, and then they said, we will wait for some caravan to come from Baitul Muqaddas. And then he said, it will be arriving this morning. So you will see them after Salat al-Fajr. And he described the caravan as well. And then when they came, he talked to them. Bilkul. Yes, that is related to his return. Yes.
And I think just going back to one of the questions from earlier with respect to the time that the chain on the door was still moving, I often think when this thing comes up, do we really understand time, or is it linear the way it is here on in this world, or is it elastic, if you will? In just like we know that क़यामत का एक दिन 50,000 दुनिया के दिन के बराबर होगा, something like that, which we don't have much details about just yet.
Subhanallah, absolutely. The fourth dimension, and even physics now is finding that time is more mysterious than we thought. Ji, bilkul Yunus bhai. The holiest messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that in heaven there's a tree that, you know, if a bird flies around it, it would take 700 years for it to complete that. Absolutely. Time is a creation, and the way I think that we look at all creation as metaphysical and physical when we're trying to understand, then I wonder if there's a physicality and a metaphysicality to time as well. I think quantum physics now is telling us that time is very, very different as you go into different levels and dimensions. So the idea of linear, I think, yeah, we're starting to throw out the window now. Bilkul Yunus bhai.
Thank you. All right, if there are no further questions, inshallah, we'll look forward to seeing everyone next Sunday.
And we'll go back to the normal time at about
जी कोई ज़ियारत पढ़ा देंगे, कोई मौलाना ज़ियारत पढ़ा दें छोटी सी end of the program.
Ji,
हाँ मौलाना ज़ियारत पढ़ा दीजिए.
Inshallah. Ji, next Sunday we'll go back to our normal time. Ji, bilkul. Mutawajjih ziyarat. Assalamu alaikum ya Aba Abdullah. Assalamu alaikum ibn Rasulullah. Assalamu alaikum. والسلام عليك وعلى المستشهدين معك جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء معين الضعفاء والفقراء. السلام عليك يا شمس الشموس نيس النفوس. السلام عليك يا علي بن موسى الرضا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب العصر والزمان. الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن يا مظهر الإيمان يا إمام الإنس والجان. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسخل الله مخرجك وزهورك واجعلنا من أنصارك وأعوانك ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم صل
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.